This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show where we discuss any and all aspects of pop culture that is on our mind at the time. We are your hosts, Tyler
and Chris.
And today we're just going to see where the conversation takes us and see how that goes. So, you want to kick us off, Chris?
Yeah. We've both been watching Ahsoka. Did you binge them? Did you wait for a couple weeks and binge them? Or?
No, I've pretty much been watching them as they come out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, me too. So there's a lot of speculation, which in the last episode, one of the big conversation topics was laid to rest. Who or what is in Marek or whatever, whatever his name is. And whoever had green smoke on their bingo card. Minor spoiler for that. All right, I'm not as concerned with that because I really didn't think it was going to be a clone of Luke. Even though if you watch online videos, there was evidence. People were like, "What wouldn't make sense if it was Ezra? How would he have even gotten back here?" The Purgle. The same way he got to the other side of the universe, did you forget he controls those things? He could have skipped back in like 30 minutes later. He just zipped back and forth because he controls he's like the Purgle master.
It's like, are we just going to like skip out too that these Lovecraftian horror things are just called Purgles?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, it's like the kitten version of Cthulhu.
Dave Filoni decided that a long time ago. So the biggest mystery and the most compelling one, I think, is this though, and I haven't seen anybody talk about it, so write this down. So did Sabine just like rehome her Lothcat, or is there somebody feeding it? Did she set it free? Is there a droid that comes in and puts food down for it and also pets it and gives it love, or did she just like dip out and was like, later Lothcat, whatever your name was?
It's like, well, it was a wild animal to start with, so maybe it can still take care of itself.
I hope so, because Sabine clearly doesn't give a
that, and we got Clancy Brown there. He'll take care of it.
So, who did you think was inside the thing? We didn't discuss this at all prior to this, and it was something I
don't know. I've been trying to just be in the moment with it, and not speculate too far into it.
That is for the best, because what I end up doing is ruining things for myself, because I write it out in my head and nothing can live up to the exact thing that I wish would happen. Obviously, there was so many rumors and so much speculation, for everything from Barriss to Ezra to that clone of Luke to Starkiller from The Force Unleashed. And then it didn't help matters by people found out Sam Witwer's name is in the credits, because his name is in the credits of every Star Wars title, because he does grunts and groans. And what's weird to me is here's how up Hollywood is. A guy, I've talked about this in weeks past, where it's Star Wars, we're still on the topic of Star Wars, so it just happens that this lines up with it. I talked about how I think the thespian arts have been unkind to people like Mark Hamill, who are great actors, but maybe they're not as good looking. And then they get relegated to voice jobs, voice acting, being under heavy makeup or what have you, until they actually age into other roles where you don't have to be traditionally good looking. Then there's a guy like Sam Witwer, who's like traditional like 50s like Mad Men stunning, full head of jet black hair, stone cut jaw, and then he's like just doing video games and like animated shows. Never shows his face. And then when you think like, oh, he's definitely in this, he's wearing a mask. We can't see his handsome face. Are you kidding me with this? It drives me insane that this is the way it is. I'm like, this has got to be a simulation, right? Like there is a digit that went wrong somewhere and reality is Anyway, I just wanted to get that one off my chest. And if anybody out there knows what happened to that Lothcat, I'd be interested about your theories. Maybe it's just like the Mandalorians are kind of the Klingons of the Star Wars-averse.
That Lothcat is going to have its own merchandise line. It's going to have its own bank account. It's going to be fine.
Well, and they probably will. Now that this show is, I'm surprised they don't already have that merch on the way. Like they had, what were those things called that were in the The Force Awakens that were porgs?
Yeah, porgs.
I mean, this is literally like a cat with chicken legs or something. Like, people would love those, I would think. Anyway.
So at least have a squishable of it.
I was kind of hoping it wouldn't necessarily, I don't know, with now that they're dealing with time travel, I don't know, and it's not straight up time travel, I know, but we don't really know that the best way to explain something like this is to not fully explain it. Keep it loose. That's why the Force is so compelling and works, is because it's not like, I think we can go back and forth on like the Harry Potter minutia of like how their magic works or whatever, but she got too specific with it, and that's why sometimes you can poke at plot holes and when it comes to things like that. Gandalf, who the knows how his magic works? Is he super powerful? Is he immortal? Is he undead? What can he do? What can't he do?
So, well, I mean, he's essentially an allegorical angel, so.
Yeah. So, and it's never really made, it's kind of an undefined power set. And that's why nobody questions it, because Tolkien never got ultra specific, unlike JK. And just like with the Force, they left it so vague that they can, it's left the newer writers to open to doing whatever the they want. Like, can they heal people now? Maybe if you're a giant worm, not if you're Qui-Gon. Whoopsie.
I mean, it's been about, 40 years by now? It's like, medical droids have advanced since then.
Yeah. Okay. I get people being mad about Reva from the other thing, Obi-Wan, which will come up again later. But that was kind of in the dark and we didn't get a good look at it. When the new blonde chick, when she impales Sabine, it's not dead center.
No, I know a lot of people were criticizing that, like, oh,
everyone.
Like, I've gone back and looked at screenshots. It's off to the side.
Yeah.
In the lower abdomen.
Yes.
Qui-Gon was upper to middle chest.
Yeah. It's
right in the middle.
Yeah. So it also went through his spine.
And he also didn't die right away either. So look at the time between where it hit and when they got medical attention. Qui-Gon didn't have time. Sabine did.
Yeah. And like there was Ahsoka right there with her ship. There was that. She was like on her way, had a ship. Plus they're like right at a city. Now you could say, where were Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan? Well, they had those like reactors and there was like force field things. Maybe it was like literally impossible for him to get him anywhere in time. But even then, straight down the middle and in the spine, like right through the back. With this, it's in the side, and some people, even though it's like everybody wants to be super accurate about it, but then when you point out a fact like most people with a stomach wound like that actually survive, it's just extremely painful, then they're like, I don't want to hear about it. So anyway, because everybody has to do their favorite thing to do about the thing they love, hate Star Wars.
Yeah. It's like, let's complain about fantasy medicine.
Yeah, anything they could. I was like, this is going to cost him. Although it is weird. Like, what's up with everybody keep getting stabbed in the stomach? Like, they need to stop that. Just, or the next time they do it, that person dies. Like, just have them kill somebody kill Morgan that way. Just right through the stomach and then back out. She dies. Everybody's happy. They're like, finally. Or then they'll be like, oh, I guess this person didn't die from a stomach wound.
I don't know. I just love where we draw our lines in the sand. Oh, we can do things with our mind. That's cool. All right. We can travel through intergalactic space in seconds. That's fine. We got droids that can do everything. That's cool. We have galactic Senate with tons of alien races. That's fine. A stab wound? I don't know.
Yeah. So, unless we veer away from it, I just wanted to go ahead and get all my thoughts out about Ahsoka, because Ahsoka is one of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time. I mean, like, especially if you go just based on like old canon or new canon. If it's new canon, then she is my favorite character of that set. She's not going to replace like Ewan McGregor or these other characters, especially like the formation of the identity of Luke Skywalker from the beginning. Nothing's going to replace that, but she had such a similar evolution of her character. And there's videos that are dedicated to analyzing this, so them saying like this wasn't working. Here's what they miss about that, about when she started off, and was calling Anakin Sky Guy, and I think sometimes people forget this is actually meant for children.
That, and this was actually intentional.
Yes, she was meant to, just like Luke was annoying. He was a kid, a dumb kid, and he was whiny. She was cocky and full of herself and annoying in a different way than Luke. But if you watch the progression, I've also seen people say, you know, like Rosario Dawson seems like dour and is nothing like her original character. You find me somebody who lived through like 3 wars from the time they were 18 to 44 years old and show me that they haven't gone through any changes. That would be a psychopath. She's lost like literally everything in her life. It's gonna change you. So, and like on that day when she went into when like Darth Vader originally killed her in Rebels, she fought like Darth Maul, the Inquisitors, then went up to that tower and fought Darth Vader, died, got dragged out into the world between worlds by Ezra. Bear in mind, even though it was like a year apart from Ezra's point of view, or however much time it was, for her it was seconds. And then she fought Emperor Palpatine and like his force fire. That's crazy. Anyway,
Not to mention the place she called home and the people she called her family turned their backs on her.
yeah. So I think Rosario Dawson's doing a great job, and I think we're going to see a different side to how she's portraying the character.
I see it more as a stoic kind of thing, because if you look at her attire, the way she moves, even the shapes of her lightsabers, it's even more so indicative of like a samurai, or like what we think of as samurais than how the other Jedi were.
And that's, you know, I think Dave Filoni has been open about using samurai imagery and I can't, the names escape me, but certain very specific movies as inspiration for how they presented her, and for her introduction in The Mandalorian, to her reintroduction in The Mandalorian. I was kind of hoping, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily have made sense, or it would have been a new wrinkle if Merrick had been Ezra. And I think that it being the Luke clone, the Luke with 2 U's, would have been too much of a stretch. So I actually, the one that made the most sense was maybe going to be Barriss. And people were like, that's clearly a very slender man. And I was like, yeah, I guess people forgot that some women can have small breasts. I don't know if people are aware of that. That is a thing that's possible.
Yeah. But since it is revealed that he is, or the green mist came out of him, does that mean that, is it possible that he was just armor brought up in witchcraft from the Night Sisters?
Yeah, I think the identity of that, well, and they might just let that go and it'll just always be a mystery, but I think they're definitely, it's going to be a Chekhov's gun, because if she can do that, what else could she resurrect? I mean, they had the ghosts in when they reintroduced the Darksaber in Rebels, and I think Darth Maul was there. There were some ghosts there too. I don't know how. Maybe they'll resurrect Darth Maul. Maybe he'll be a smoky ghost, or I don't think they're going to do a full resurrection. I think that might be a bridge too far. Then again, healing that giant worm I thought would be too, but they went ahead and did that. So somehow Darth Maul returns. I hope. I mean, that would be pretty badass, because there was a lot of people, every time they keep trying to bring him back, something happens and they don't. You know, like I think there was either going to be a Solo 2 or a spin-off movie from that would have led into the whole syndicate that Darth Maul was in charge of at that time. I really hope they do bring Barriss back. I want to see that storyline resolved, because that was like the biggest single event with Ahsoka, like the bombing of the temple and her getting framed for it and then her walking away, and that's how that one season ended. And I don't know exactly what they would have done if they'd done the full version of the final season the way they would have had there not been time in between. So I think that would be something really awesome to explore. But the biggest thing that I wanted to put on record is, and this is just my thought, it's not necessarily a prediction, but it's also kind of just looking at how George Lucas would have done this, at least. I think that Ezra is dead.
Possibly.
Straight up. Now, hear me out. I have a few clues. I can prove it. Now, why I think this, I started thinking about it because I was like, before the reveal was made, I was like, of who was in that suit, I was like, I don't think it's Ezra. That doesn't really make as much sense. It's got an Inquisitor lightsaber, very specifically Inquisitor lightsaber, and it's an Inquisitor we've never seen. So who knows? It could be a double fake out. He's the sort of guy who he got dressed up in like bad guy armor all the time. He loved faking people out. Maybe he's gotten that good with a lightsaber that he could, play around with Ahsoka. It's been some years, and they were building him up to be a pretty powerful character. But by all accounts, I mean, depending on how you look at it, some people interpret there to not be multiple timelines in this. I think we're going to get it revealed that there are. But some people don't think that Ezra saved Ahsoka from death, that there weren't two timelines. I think there were. I think Ahsoka was dead, and then I think he prevented that. And I think just like she stopped him from saving Kanan, from saving them, she basically, without getting into like sci-fi jargon and saying, you'll create a paradox, she said it in more simpler terms. Children would understand. And that was the smart way to go. So he was able to save Ahsoka, but still had to watch Kanan die again and let that happen. I think, final episode of Rebels, spoilers for that, Ezra takes Thrawn to the other side of the universe or a different galaxy or whatever it is. One of two things happen. Thrawn kills him immediately because he's unarmed. I'm not sure if he even had a gun. He definitely didn't have his lightsaber as he gave that to Sabine. Or where they're in like his part of space, his people come and rescue him, Thrawn, and they overpower Ezra and take him prisoner, where he might have eventually killed him. I don't know. Either way, I think he's dead. And my prediction in my head was Ahsoka goes to, this isn't how it ended up happening, but she's there either way, but she would end up in the world between worlds, and that's where she would find Ezra, and she would witness his death. And it would be, years prior, she pulls him away from it in the same way that he did for her. Because in George's words, it's like poetry. They rhyme. And that's brilliant. It's amazing. It's the one thing that you can keep doing that with. Because they're like plays. They're simple. They're supposed to be simple morality tales, This guy, he doesn't seek power. He wants to be the protector of the universe, and they tell him like, you can't do this because you have too much attachment. You love things too much. And when you have that sort of attachment, when you begin to lose those things, you'll grow angry about it. And so he does, and that's when he goes unchecked, and then he begins his descent. It's Shakespearean at its core, and is just like any one of these could be done with just like a black stage and capes. The good ones, The dialogue's not always great, but the intensity is there. And was it weird that they didn't de-age Hayden Christensen for the Obi-Wan show, but then they de-aged him really badly in this one when he was supposed to be younger at like Clone Wars era in Obi-Wan, and in this one he would have been older? Who is making these decisions?
Well, which aspect of Anakin are we seeing in the world between worlds?
Yeah. I mean, is it? And some people have speculated. This is spoiler for episode 4 of Ahsoka. Up to this point, up to everything, there were minor spoilers, or you would have just been lost in the conversation because we didn't get real specific with story stuff. But from right here, whatever happens, she gets to the world between worlds. She is not shown to have been killed. We don't really know. Jedis can survive a lot because they can make use of the Force. I don't know why people don't just like Force jump or like Force cushion your landing more. Just Force cushion your landing. When they're like, Mace Windu couldn't have survived that, but if you can jump that high, you can jump down that low. Yeah. Just, point your hands down and, do the thing with the Force and lift yourself up, cushion your landing.
Didn't they do that some in the Clone Wars?
They had to have, because they would jump out of the helicarriers or to like God knows how far. I mean, so many different incarnations of these characters are shown to have done like all these superhuman things, and then you want to tell me Plo Koon couldn't have like jumped out of his starship like right before it crash landed and then just like tumbled somewhere? No, headcanon, Plo Koon lives because I never saw him get shot. Anyway, I don't think Ahsoka's dead. It was really shocking when jumps over to that. I was like, maybe it's one of those, like, well, she was already there, so maybe you can go back more easily if you're there, or something happened. Maybe it's like a ghost dad situation where she's kind of spooked and got spooked out of her body, but she's not fully dead. That would
Maybe it's because where she's pulled from one existence into the world and then into another, she can cross.
I think on Ryan Airy on Screen Crush was saying, they did say this was like a kind of a nexus point or something like that. The reason they were there doing the map and everything was because this place was important to the Force or something. So maybe that had something to do with it. Again, keep it vague, and people won't get mad if they get too convoluted. That's why the midichlorians.
Yeah.
That's you run into trouble when you start getting more specific and start trying to explain it. People get mad about that still, but it makes sense. It's the reason people have more than somebody else is because you attract more of something within your body. We're only just now. I mean, magic is like science you haven't figured out yet. It just makes sense. I mean, anything. If you show an iPad to somebody, or even a cigarette lighter to somebody from like 2,000 years ago, you're going to be capable of witchcraft. So, I mean, or predicting the weather. Burn him, he's a witch. For us, it's easy and every day. And like if we were to see technology from 2,000 years from now, it'd be indistinguishable from magic. This is common knowledge. So anyway, not sure. I am really interested to see if this is Anakin just restored to his younger self, and this is simply his Force ghost, and the world between worlds is kind of accessible to these Force ghosts, then I don't know what he's going to tell her. Or maybe he has a plan. Maybe he knows, I think maybe he's going to show her some things she didn't get to see, like Ezra. Some people think, I haven't looked at anything, I just saw some headlines on some YouTube videos. Some people think there's going to be something nefarious there. I don't. And this is also something I was telling my girlfriend, that this isn't how I envisioned it, but it was hinted at that there might be a flashback. And then, with Hayden Christensen in there, because in one of the trailers his voice could be heard. And I thought, what if it's not a flashback, but it's actually her at the world between worlds and she's just seeing past events? And then I thought, man, what if at some really low point he appears to her, comes to her just like Obi-Wan did, just like Luke did for Rey, and she's like super angry with him because of all these things that have happened, and they get to have this cathartic talk. And then there's like this real true forgiveness, because I was like, that's his sister. He's her brother. They just as Obi-Wan said, you were my brother. I loved you. These people are family. And for Anakin, more so than any other Jedi, because he didn't follow the code. He allowed his emotions to rule him in all ways. So I really wanted to see something like that, and I'm hoping that we do, because it's like, at the end of the day, Star Wars is about, if nothing more, the core of all these stories, at least Lucas's and Filoni's version of it, maybe not J.J. Abrams, but at its core, it's about forgiveness. There's literally nothing you can't do in Star Wars that you can't be forgiven for. And I think there's something beautiful about that. And beyond my personal feelings about what I could or couldn't forgive somebody for on a personal level, on a universal level, in the grand scope of the cosmos, I think we could be a little more forgiving of each other.
Yes. One thing with the new Ahsoka, maybe the looming shadow, is what's going to happen with Balin's arc. Now that Ray Stevenson has sadly passed on. That's
heartbreaking, and I wasn't expecting to like him so much.
Now, I had forgot that it was him that played Balin, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right, he did die.
Yeah, it sucks too, so much more, because he's not a throwaway villain. Like Morgan might be, but he is not. And
it's like he's already shown in episode 4 alone so much nuance.
Yeah.
It's just like,
they hinted at it.
More.
Yeah, they hinted at it early and then just like leaned into it. He's more nuanced than I think what they intended Christopher Lee's Count Dooku was maybe originally intended to be. They're actually doing that with this character, and it's it's really interesting to see him switch back and forth. You know, he had to be in this fight with Ahsoka, brings that to an end, and then just puts away his weapon and just starts being the classic diplomatic Jedi and just uses the Force to read her mind and knows exactly what to say to Sabine. And I think Sabine's in handcuffs at the end.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So they do take her prisoner. She's not exactly, because some people think like, well, she switched sides. No, she's going to get Ezra. It's just, she's going to double cross the bad guys once she gets there. At least that's got to be what her plan is. She thinks once her and Ezra are reunited, there's nothing they can't do. Yeah. Do you think that Shin, the blonde girl, is Balin's daughter?
Oh, yeah, it's a possibility.
He has a strong reaction when Ahsoka like force pushed her into the rock or whatever. That's when he's just like, nope, you're gone. I don't know. And then I
mean, there's enough time that would have passed that could very well be.
Yeah, and then when did he leave the Jedi Order? When did he no longer consider himself a Jedi? Was it during the Clone Wars, like a few other Jedi we've seen? Like in the Clone Wars, there was an episode about a four-armed guy. I think he was like the same...
Oh, General Krell?
Yeah. Was he the same species as like Dexter, the diner guy that's friends with Obi-Wan? That bitch got what he had coming. Not Dex, but Krell. That guy sucked. So could he have become disillusioned with the war and left prior to Order 66, or did he have an apprentice that gets killed? This is why I think Luthen from Andor was a Jedi, and in Order 66 he had an apprentice that got killed. We've seen so many stories where the mentor gets killed and the apprentice has to. I mean, that's how that new video game, that's what that's all about, is, you know, the red-haired guy loses his master and he has to figure out his way in the universe. And then, you know, Luke loses his parents, he loses Obi-Wan, he loses Yoda. Rey lost Luke.
Kanan lost his mentor.
His mentor, yeah, we got to see that in the Bad Batch. Obi-Wan lost Qui-Gon. It goes on and on. But we've not seen what happens to a master with an apprentice when they really lose him. I mean, like, Anakin lost Ahsoka, but she didn't die. It was just like an estranged relationship. So what would happen if you were unable to save your apprentice in such a situation? What would that do to you? And I think that Luthen from Andor, the Skarsgård, I think that's his backstory. At least that's what I'm hoping. But it looks like they might be doing that with Balin instead. Unless he already left the Order. Of course, my other theory was that he was looking to go to the world between worlds to prevent Order 66, which doesn't seem to have happened at all. It doesn't even look like he wants to go to the world between worlds or maybe even knows about it.
I don't know. There's a lot of complexities there because, one, a lot of the Inquisitors were just ex-Jedi.
Yeah, mostly what their police, their guards.
The temple guards.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Balin seems, I don't know, somewhere in the middle on that, because he still seems to hold several of the Jedi ways and dispositions. Mm-hmm. Especially when he thinks of, you know, if he has to kill Ahsoka.
Yeah, because he even said it would be a shame to kill the Jedi. There's so few of them left. Like, he still has respect for the Order, and I don't want to, nostalgia is not the right word, but at least a certain sense of reverence toward his former brethren. So why? Yeah, it does seem odd that, I mean, he even tried to explain it, why he wants to bring Thrawn back, because yeah, it'll mean war, so... You
have to create, or you have to destroy in order to create.
Yeah, maybe it's a means to an end. I don't know. But then, and then again, we've also been shown in The Mandalorian, in Andor, in, well, maybe not Andor, but in The Mandalorian in a major way. And in this, people from the Empire are all over the place. And it's basically like they low-key do still control everything. They didn't quash it all. It'd be like if you had a First World War in a hypothetical other Earth. And then a second world war tried a bunch of the people for war crimes and then just paper clipped them on over to NASA. You think about that. Hypothetically, it's not a real situation that actually happened here in America.
But I think he's definitely somewhere in the middle if we just go by his lightsaber colors.
Yeah.
The introduction of the orange sabers in this. It's kind of like what Mace Windu's represented, where it's like he's on the light side, but he walks on the dark side. Maybe the orange is kind of like similar to that, but on the opposite side of that line.
Yeah. I don't know if you could say like Ahsoka is like true neutral, where she carries white, because those were actually red
purified
crystals.
reds.
Yeah. So that's kind of that dichotomy there too. Like how did the other colors become the other colors, the orange at least? And they probably won't explain that.
I think or
at least in the show, it'll be explained in some comic book.
Yeah, I think this is canon still now, that the color of the crystal is determined once the Force user finds it. Like when the younglings went on that like expedition in the ice cave in Clone Wars, it's like the crystals themselves weren't a certain color. It's like they became that once they like first touched it. And so that's why hers were purified and she's got the white now. The reds are corrupted. That's why they're red, and so on.
I thought about this just before you mentioned that specific episode. David T's back at it.
It's like, granted, it's only his voice, but how awesome is that to get more David Tennant in Star Wars?
Yes, like live action, even though he's still a cartoon. And I thought, okay, so I do want to say, I watched that fight with him and the droid. I thought, wouldn't it be awesome, because he's got like a collection of lightsabers. Yeah. Wouldn't it be super badass if he just like General Grievous the out of that, since he's got 4 arms?
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, is he gonna do it? It's like, no, they're probably on the ship, but and he was fighting with it. Kind of reminded me of like Niles from Frasier. I don't know why. Anyway, I thought people would really make fun of that, but no one did, because it felt like two nerds having a slap fight. And I'm not making fun of it, because I actually have really enjoyed this show. There are aspects of it I'd change for sure, but the things that people have nitpicked about it, I think are dumb nitpicks, honestly. Like the stab through the side, That's one thing I was actually wondering, is like, what are people actually feeling about this show? Because I've not read a lot of the articles, just kind of like the headlines, because I don't want, like I said, I'm just trying to be in the moment and not speculate too much. But at the same time, I'm still curious as what people think. But the headlines are so back and forth.
I know, yeah. Like, well, in this week with episode 4, Dave Filoni single-handedly saves Star Wars. And you might just come across one that's like, well, Star Wars is
Yeah, because like,
how could you have such an extreme reaction?
With episode 3, it's just like, oh, does this villain make sense? I'm like, we're 3 episodes in. Calm down. They're going somewhere. Let them get there.
Yeah.
Then this episode, like, was fantastic. Like the fights, where we're heading, the glimpse of what we're going to get to see. I can't wait for the next episode.
I've always been, I'll be straight up, I'll be honest about this. I am a sucker for a sword fight, and it's Star Wars were some of the first sword fights that I ever saw. And granted, those weren't great in those first 3 films. It's like the first one, it's Alec Guinness and David Prowse kind of hopping around at each other, whacking each other with sticks, and they each subsequent sword fight gets better. And that's why I had to, when I got a little older, I dipped into Highlander. Not great storytelling all the time, but
not great sword fighting either.
So thing is, like, and that's why, episode 3, I think it has like 5 sword fights in it. Not all extremely long ones, but if Michael Bay made sword fighting films, I would be a Michael Bay fan, That would be, my equivalent of people tuning in for explosions and whatnot.
Yeah, I was going to say, unfortunately, Michael Bay only does explosions around here.
Yeah, so the show has not let me down with, like, everybody's got a sword, everybody be sword fighting, and it's pretty good, too. They've also, somebody pointed out, I can't remember, I think it was the guy from Heavy Spoilers, and I forget his name, but that's the name of the channel, so it's cited, that Balin's sword fighting style is basically that of, like, Darth Vader, like post-accident Anakin, that he is just like pure menacing power. Like he just like lunges and swipes, and it is just like strong thrusts. And that people would be pretty awesome to see like those two.
Yeah.
Because we've never seen two people with that same style. The only one person's been Darth Vader. But the only other main question to discuss, well, unless you have some other ones, I think we've covered quite a bit. Sabine and the Force is the other big topic of discussion.
Well, that's something I've always wondered, because they're like, oh yes, well, the Force is in all living things.
That was said in 1977.
Yeah. So to me, that means that
It's
potentially anybody can use the Force.
Right.
Which is
to
almost,
the degree,
yeah.
what degree? And I tried to and I was talking about this with my girlfriend Allison, and I was like, I think of it in a real world way. And they've done ESP testing and things like this, where someone will look at you and you don't know, and you have to write down whether or not you feel like they're looking at you or something like that. To hypothetically, if you had a person who had real precognition, it's the difference between that being like having a weird vibe about something, being like, was that? What was that? Or like Nick Cage and knowing.
Yeah.
Where you actually just know exactly what's going to happen next. I think Sabine might be on the lower end of that. But they don't spell it out. They don't say she does not have the Force. She is not Force sensitive. She is not this. Kanan almost comes right out and says, he says she's blocked. Why is it that no Mandalorians have the Force?
Except for the one.
Right.
It's because they've blocked it off.
Right. So I think it's like they're the Klingons of the universe. They're too emotionally challenged and they block themselves from it. I was like, I wonder, have they specifically said that she isn't or doesn't or couldn't? It's not out there. So if she unlocked some part of her mind, and I don't think that it opens it up to saying everyone could have the Force, except it does, but Ahsoka says talent has something to do with it. I think her being Mandalorian has a lot to do with it too. Why is it that, they're not receptive to it? It's because their warlike nature blocks them from being able to utilize it. The other end of that spectrum is apparently Yoda's race, whatever it is, are exceptional in it.
Well, if you think about it, like they talk about like singing, only a very few people are actually tone deaf. So that means that potentially anybody can learn to sing, and yet there's some people that take to it naturally and just awesome vocalists, and other people are just okay.
Yeah.
Or just not good at all.
That's a really good analogy, actually. So I would not be pissed if it turns out she does, or if she can use it. I think it's got to be if it's earned. Yeah. And it's been built. And when I thought about that, when it was like, well, how could she? I mean, as a Mandalorian, yeah, she can be proficient in fighting, but don't around with a lightsaber, you know what I'm saying? Like, unless you have like Force precognition and you're not going to lop off your own arm,
or your droid,
be cool with that. But then I did go back and rewatch some of the clips and episodes, and Kanan, when Kanan's training her, which it's not to become a Jedi, it's just to help her
wield the dark saber.
Yeah, wield the dark saber to help reunify factions on her home planet, and just complicated Mandalorian politics stuff. But he was talking to Hera and says, it's like she's blocked. It's like she's not open to it. But they never say she is specifically not Force sensitive, almost to the point where they're saying, I think she is. This could be a reach, but it's almost like he's saying she is Force sensitive. She just isn't open to it. I don't know. And I don't know if Dave Filoni was hedging his bets, if he fully intended for this to be the case and knew that this is where he was going to go if he ever made Rebels Season 5, Ahsoka, or what. Or if she's just not going to end up having the Force and that'll be enough because she's an awesome enough fighter on her own. Also, she is that one character like Leia in Obi-Wan that's like, you want to pull for this person, but they keep up every step of the way. So good luck. Whatever happens on the other side of the galaxy, you hope Thrawn doesn't kill you.
Well, maybe that's her Ahsoka arc, because she was annoying and got a lot of people killed before she became a fan favorite.
Yeah, that could be. I think that's, yeah. And we get to see that one guy again, the pilot ranger guy. He was in The Mandalorian a few times. He goes, and you know who I'm talking about.
Piloted the X-Wing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't know his name, but I like him. Anyway, that's a nice little connector bit for these, like the Filoni Favreau-verse of Star Wars, until the next episode when they will have ruined Star Wars forever, and then episode 6 where maybe they save Star Wars forever and Star Wars is back.
So, well, let's just hope that they end on an even number. That way Star Wars can be saved forever.
So, yeah, I am having fun with the show. I'm really enjoying it, and I've gotten pretty much a sword fight in every episode, if not more than one, as dumb as that sounds, and I think you know that that's not all I'm here for. I'm here for the plot.
Yeah.
And I think you guys have been on Instagram, so you know what the plot is.
Yes, the plot.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Hera's plot.
Well, we pretty much just talked about Ahsoka. We planned on not talking about anything, and we just talked about Ahsoka because there was enough there with 4 episodes to just get an episode out of. So we've
kind of Bob Ross this episode. It's just a happy little accident, and hopefully everyone else has had fun with this too. I'm excited to see where Ahsoka goes and maybe do a more in-depth discussion on future episodes. But I think this is a good stopping point.
Yeah.
So hopefully we didn't spoil too much for you. If you guys have been with us this far, hop in the comments, join the conversation. What do you think about Ahsoka? Do you think our speculations are off? Anything else you're looking forward to? But with that, I think we'll end today's episode. If you made it with us this far, thank you. Be sure to follow us on our social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Special thanks to Chase. We'll have links for him as well. Anything else?
I wrote that. Chase is a good guy. But I wrote that music.
And until next time, may the force be with you.